As a new resident to Oklahoma, I'm faced with many of the same landscaping problems that you're faced with in your home gardening situation. As a new resident here, you can see that I am starting pretty much from ground zero with our lawn. The lawn has had a lot of wear and tear on it, has not really been fertilized properly, and so it's in really poor shape, and we have quite a ways to go on it. To begin with, to try to get our lawn in good shape, starting at this time of year around September, the first thing that I wanted to do was pick up some of our trash that was in the yard where it was very visible to find. As you can see, we've got a little bit of rock, some twigs, a little bit of shingles. Not recently had a tornado here in Stillwater, so all kinds of trash that was in the yard that will actually obstruct the grass from growing, as well as maybe harm you when you're using your lawnmower. So in any new situation where you're coming to a new lawn or trying to renovate, you want to make sure you pick up that trash and get those kinds of things out of the way to start with. We're in good shape as far as one thing goes, that we've still got patches of Bermuda grass scattered throughout the lawn, mixed in of course with some of our typical weeds of dandelion and crabgrass. So we're going to try to basically rejuvenate the lawn using what we've got here. Now, before we get into a lot of the practices that you might think of, one thing that I threw in was to use some Roundup or glyphosate, as many of us are familiar with. And basically what I've done is I've used the glyphosate, which is a non-selective herbicide, to do some edging around the flower beds, the driveway, and even a little bit of spot treating from some of our weeds over here. This gave us plenty of time for the grass to die out before we come to our next step, which is using a fertilizer. Now, the best thing to do would be to take a soil test and find out just what your pH and your nutrient deficiency might be. But at this late of stage in the season, I basically know that we're going to need to use a lot of nitrogen to try to push the grass along. Now, those of you that have been using fertilizer on a routine basis throughout the season, it's best for you to use on your last application of fertilizer, which would be around September, a fertilizer that is a little bit lower in nitrogen, low in phosphorus, and higher in potassium. And basically that's to stimulate some new root growth to help us through the winter time. A good ratio would be 3:1:2 or 2:1:3. This particular fertilizer is a 3:1:2 ratio, which I'm going to use because I need a little bit more nitrogen to push our grass along. Again, those of you that have been fertilizing on a routine basis might want to go with a little bit lower nitrogen and a little bit higher potassium, which is your third number. And it all depends on what's available at your garden center. The first step would be to figure up the size of your lawn. Mine is about 800 square feet, and at our recommendation of 1 pound of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, I'm going to use a little bit less than 3 pounds. The spreader that I'm going to use is just really a hand spreader, where I just have scooped out a little bit of my pre-weighed fertilizer, pour that into the handheld spreader, and I can use this spreader here to spread fertilizer, seed, any herbicide, granular herbicide, or anything like that that I may need in the future. With the lawn this small, it's easy to get good coverage. I don't have to worry about missing any strips because I'll go over it both east and both north and south for my spreader. Of course, those of you with a little larger lawn, you might want to use a regular drop spreader or a rotary spreader. Anything can be used. You can even borrow something from your neighbor, even rent it if you need to. But I found this is to be pretty handy, inexpensive, and easy for me to use for my different landscape chores. Now, if you are going to use a rotary or drop spreader, make sure again that you go both patterns and split up your application rate so you don't leave any strips between. So let me show you how this works and what kind of coverage we'll get in utilizing this fertilizer. Unfortunately, our shrubs and flower beds have been neglected a little bit too. Here we have some euonymus that was planted a little bit too close to the wall. We've got a little bit of winter kill. We lack the vigor that we would like due to some nutritional problems. And as you can see, the grass and weeds have grown right in, and we've used our glyphosate to kill out an area where we might try to want to landscape. We could do a couple of things here. We could try to salvage the plants that we have by pruning out some of the dead, fertilizing them. We can add some more plantings even this fall, which is a good time to plant our trees and shrubs. So we've got some problems here with our wall on the east side of the garage. We've got a little area that would be nice for annual flowers, but the previous renters have put in some climbing roses, which really isn't a good selection when you have an entrance here into your home. As you are very familiar, climbing roses are very vigorous, will cascade out into the walkway and can be harmful to your people walking by, and actually be very cluttered and cause some congestion right in your entryway. We could do a couple of things again. We could leave the trellis here, come up with some other vines. Some of us are familiar with energy conservation topics in our landscape. If this was on a south side or a west side wall and not on the garage, we may even want to try to plant some vines to help cool this down a little bit during the summer. Some examples would be deciduous vines like clematis or Virginia creeper that would lose their leaves in the wintertime, allow the sun to come in and heat up our home, but then shade it again during the summer. Any kind of vine or ground cover is going to need a little bit of maintenance in an area this small. So another option would be to even remove the trellis and just use our annual flowers in the shrub or flower bed and plant some just for color. We've got several options, as many of you have seen in some of the other shows. But before we'd want to do that, we've got a lot of competition here again with the Bermuda grass. So we've used some of the glyphosate to kill it out, and it looks like it'll take another application here because it's a little more shaded and our kill hasn't been quite as successful. So a couple more applications, we'll have this killed out, till up the beds, and be ready to plant again. Our last obstacle is a mulberry tree or bush that's been planted right here in the corner. It blocks the view coming in the walkway. It would continue to grow, and it's right up against the brick here, so it would enlarge and could even cause a chance of cracking our cement walkway and doing a little bit of damage to the foundation. So we'll kill this out completely and pull it up. We've got a lot of work ahead of us in this landscape. We'll come back next spring and show you what progress we've made.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.